What is up, guys? PodKack is here, and welcome to the PodKack number 3. Now, for those of you not familiar, the PodKack is a weekly podcast-alike commentary that's done in a much looser, unedited format where I basically talk about a certain subject. And this week, we're going to be focusing on the subject that everyone's talking about this week, which is The Division. The time this video has come out, the Division beta has finally come to an end, and I'm going to be answering the question that, I most commonly get on my Division videos, which is The Division any good? Like, is it actually a fun game? And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, before I get started, I do want to give a shout out. I keep forgetting to do this, but I'm going to give a shout out to JustHammy484. This is the guy who actually gave me my code for the Xbox One beta. And I previously had pre-ordered on the PS4, and I really wanted to get that extra day. So JustHammy came through, gave me that code. So thank you so much to him. Now, I want to say that in this video, I'm going to be really covering broad strokes, so many different things about The Division. Again, to answer the question, is it any good? Later down the line, I'm going to be making more specific targeted videos on certain subjects. The PvP is one of them, for example. So, will I ramble on about PvP in this video? Absolutely. So, this video is just going to be a really good way to get a raw, unedited, unbiased opinion on The Division, yet I am going to be talking more specifically later down the line. Now, let's get started with first impressions. Like, you boot up the Division beta, we all did that, and the first thing you're encountered with is probably the graphics, like what you're immediately seeing on screen. And that's already created a little bit of problems for The Division. I think obviously The Division did this itself, Ubisoft did this theirself, because back when The Division was officially announced with the E3 gameplay that came out, I think even in 2013, 2014, sometime around then, the graphics were much, much better than they are now in the beta and probably will be in the finished product. Now, obviously, this is something that I disagree with and is going to put a lot of people off. You see gameplay and it looks amazing, and then you actually play the game and it doesn't look anywhere near as good. However, I don't think the game should be judged too harshly on this basis. I'm not saying I agree with it. I wish game companies would stop doing this because a lot of us, almost all of us, realize that there's probably going to be a graphical downgrade. I mean, case in point, I think is definitely The Witcher 3. Think about The Witcher 3. That game went through the same thing. The graphics looked unbelievable when it was originally announced, and when it actually came out, the graphics just weren't as good. However, if you ask pretty much anyone who has played The Witcher 3, they'll tell you it's a fantastic, fantastic game. The user review and critic reviews back me up on this. So why wasn't there a big kind of kerfuffle about The Witcher graphics? Well, it's because it had enough game, it had enough content to back it up. And that's what we're looking for in The Division. Obviously, the graphics being way crappier than they were when it was originally announced is a bad thing. However, there's more going on. I think we need to look past this because, again, pretty much everyone does it. There's way more on the game in the game that we should be judging it on. And first and foremost, let's just talk about general gameplay and gunplay mechanics. How did the game feel? Well, I kind of touched on this in my first impressions, and I think my first impressions carried with me to the last impressions. I think this game, the combat in this game, feels fantastic as a third-person tactical shooter. Now, I'm actually pretty familiar with third-person shooters as I was a massive, ironically, a massive Mass Effect fan. And I loved Mass Effect 3 to death, played a ton of multiplayer, and although that had no PvP in it, it does give me a lot of experience with third-person games. And I've got to say, The Division, in terms of being a tactical shooter, is head and shoulders above Mass Effect 3. And again, I am a huge Mass Effect 3 fan, definitely not disparaging it, but in terms of actual tactics, utilizing cover properly, and utilizing cover for the purpose of staying alive, The Division is absolutely, it just excels in this area. I think it was very interesting actually where I kind of first started putting out Division videos, and I saw a lot of people comment that the game looks boring, and to be quite honest, that very well may be so. To an outside observer, you know, it might look a little boring, especially I know a lot of you guys with my channel come from a Destiny background. No, I'm not going to be lobbing flaming hammers at people that make them explode. That would be awesome, but it's just not... You know, the Division is just a totally different game. And although it might look a little bit boring from the outside, when you're actually in the game, it's anything but boring, because I think people who haven't played it would be surprised, and I think the people who have played it would agree with me, that you die pretty quickly, even against just basic enemies. If you're not paying attention and someone gets, you know, a good burst of SMG on you, again, even at basic enemies, they'll do substantial amounts of damage. And so you're really utilizing that tactical cover system and those third-person angles in a tactical way. You're actually trying to survive. Every time you poke your head up, it's a risky thing. Like, you will be shot and you will take a ton of damage if they hit you in a substantial way. It really does. You really actually have to move from cover to cover and poke out at enemies that are, you know, one of the interesting mechanics I've found is that there's enemies that throw grenades at you, and you'll see a little icon that they're winding up to throw the grenade at you. And if they throw a grenade at you, it's a problem. It's not just something that you can shrug off. Like, even if it's a smoke grenade, you're going to be substantially disoriented. Your screen is going to start to wobble. You're going to start to be, your vision is going to be impaired. It's hard to shoot people after that point. An incendiary grenade is devastating. You can be killed by an incendiary grenade really easily. So you'll see someone winding up to throw a grenade, and you have to pop out of cover and like shoot him before he throws the grenade, and it'll make him actually drop the grenade, and then it blows up at his feet, obviously, you know, often killing him. And you just kind of, what I'm trying to explain to you guys is that when you're actually playing the Division, you have to be on your toes. It's weird, and I haven't felt this way for a third-person shooter in a long time, maybe since back in the days of Rainbow Six Vegas, which was kind of a first and third-person shooter, where it really does feel tactile. You have to be on your toes. You have to be utilizing cover. You have to poke your head out at smart moments. You can't just keep your head out of cover and mow down enemies. Like, your guns have actual recoil. And this is something I found really interesting. In a lot of first-person games, Mass Effect 3 is one of them, for some reason, going behind cover and then aiming while you're still behind cover somehow gives your guns like laser beam accuracy. Not the case in the Division. You have substantial recoil when using any sort of assault rifle. SMGs obviously have less recoil, but they still have some real recoil as well. So it's not as simple as just aiming down sights and headshotting everyone. If you hold the trigger for more than like 5 rounds, you're going to be shooting above their head. And that's something I actually really appreciated in the Division. It actually seems to make you work for your kills. You have to be smart. You have to aim well. It's not really, doesn't really feel like you're getting any free kills. And I think this goes hand in hand with the fact that, you know, people have been saying, oh, it takes a long time to kill enemies. It takes a long time to kill people in PvP especially, and enemies. But, you know, people are always calling for, you know, I don't want it to be like Call of Duty. You hear that a lot. I don't want this to be like Call of Duty. This is bad because it'll be Call of Duty-esque. But, you know, the phrase is, one of the keystones of Call of Duty is that you kill people extremely fast. This is the opposite. It makes you work for every kill, and it's a great feeling, actually, in-game. So overall, I would say that I do like the movement and the gunplay, just base mechanics in the Division. I'm used to third-person shooters. Other people who aren't may not love it as much, but as someone who has a diverse gaming background and I have played a lot of third-person shooters, I really enjoy how the Division feels just on a base level. And I will also mention I really like how they've separated the buttons. And by this I mean, like, if you're on the Xbox, I'm going to use the Xbox controller as an example. Obviously, it's kind of the same for the PlayStation controller, just the buttons are different. But, you know, taking cover is the A button, and the PlayStation is the X button. And it's just going to be, you know, the main button you're often pressing. You see a piece of cover, you press A, you go behind it. We're all used to this in third-person games. However, luckily and smartly, they have separated going behind cover and mantling and kind of doing other things, interacting with the environment. And I think that's really smart, because I think people who've played third-person shooters will know that a lot of times in third-person shooters, you're just kind of staring at the screen where your character is doing something you never intended him to do. Like, he's mantling when you wanted him to take cover, or he's taking cover when you wanted him to mantle. And so separating these buttons, separating the take cover button and the mantle button, was a very smart idea, and it makes it so that you actually have to, your character is more likely to do what you want him to do. And this kind of sounds like maybe a little bit of a silly thing to those of us who don't play a lot of third-person shooters, but I assure you, in Mass Effect 3, again, fantastic game, love that game, but they had the A button on the Xbox be basically everything. A was take cover, A was mantle, A was revive. And so a lot of the time, A was actually, do objectives as well. So you would be going to try to revive someone, and then you would take cover, or you would mantle over an object, and that could be, the difference between life and death. And it was pretty infuriating when you're mantling something and you're screaming at your TV like, no, revive, revive, and then your guy gets killed and it's a disaster. And those kind of scenarios are completely avoided with the Division's button layout, which I think is definitely maybe a little bit too in-depth for a lot of people, but I think for the third-person shooter fans out there, I think they'll appreciate that insight, because it is a good idea. Now let's move on to the Division's PvP, the Dark Zone. This is a really interesting subject. It's a lot of people have been talking about this because it is, frankly, revolutionary. I mean, I've never played a game where I can go into the PvP map, essentially, and not fight and not get shot at by any other players, and yet still accomplish things, still come out, with loot, still have a fun time. For example, it's just very, very interesting what they've done with PvP. And I think that regardless of whether you like it or not, okay, you can not like the Dark Zone. You're welcome. There's nothing wrong with having an opinion, okay? But I really want to make it absolutely clear that we should all be really in favor of companies like Massive Entertainment, which is the people who made the Division, experimenting, because I think we can all agree that what they've done with the PvP is innovative and it's different. And it's something that it's funny how people always criticize, for example, Call of Duty for being the same. Call of Duty is the same every year. Yet those same people I see making comments like, why couldn't they just put in a team deathmatch mode? Well, the reason why is because they're not trying to make the same shit every year. It's because they're trying something new. So it's okay if you don't like it. However, we have to realize that this is something that we really haven't seen, in a shooter for basically that I can even think of another example of where this was in game. I'm sure someone's gonna, correct me in the comments of some obscure game that had this. But again, there's politics in this PvP where, you can decide whether or not to attack people. You can, give people a chance if they've gone rogue or whatever. You can decide whether to kill them. This is something, that, again, revolutionary that we've never seen before. So it's weird. There's a lot of stuff that I don't even know how to analyze. I don't know its staying power. I don't know if it's going to succeed in the future because I've never seen it before. So let's get started with the PvP. And I think, the PvP, one of the things that concern me is the whole going rogue mechanic. Now again, I actually liked the PvP experience overall. I didn't really think I'd like it as much as I did, but I really did enjoy the PvP overall. But, I'm going to talk about one of the things I had a problem with, which is the going rogue mechanic. So basically, if you're in the Dark Zone and you shoot a player, I think if you shoot them just once by accident, you don't actually go rogue, but your health turns red. Your health bar will go red. And this is going to be a problem we're going to talk about in a bit. But if you shoot him anything substantially, if you reach the damage threshold, you will go rogue. And if you just shoot someone, you don't kill them, you're going to go rogue for 19 seconds. And when you go rogue, it basically puts a little a red skull above your head and informs everyone that you've gone rogue, and then they can kill you with no repercussions. And when you die in the Dark Zone, you lose money and you lose experience, and the money is the Dark Zone currency and the experience is the Dark Zone level. The Dark Zone has its own experience levels and currency, both of which are needed to buy the higher end gear available from Dark Zone vendors. So if you die, you lose stuff. How do you die? Well, if you go rogue and it tells everyone that you're rogue, you get no repercussions if you're non-rogue for killing that rogue player. So if I see someone go rogue and I gun him down and kill him, I get money and experience. It's a good thing that I killed that rogue player. So there's a real incentive not to go rogue. Now, I have no problems with that actual kind of mechanic in and of itself. That's what kind of makes the Division's PvP so revolutionary, is that you're not necessarily, the politics aspect. However, there's some definite problems right off the bat. Firstly, gunfights can be weird. And, a third-person shooter, something I didn't mention earlier is there's a dynamic weather system in the Division. It's absolutely fantastic. Not only is there a day and night cycle, so you log on and it's nighttime randomly, and then you're playing at nighttime, and things legitimately look different at night than in the day, but there can be snowfall randomly, there can be clear skies, there can be blizzards, there can be fog. Like, there was a point where I was playing at night with a heavy fog, and it was legitimately really hard to see just down the street. And when you're in the dark zone by yourself and you can't see where you're going, basically, because there's a thick fog everywhere, that is an awesome experience. That is a fantastic in-game experience. But in any event, when there's this crazy fog rolling in and you're fighting PvE enemies, it's very easy for a random other player to just get caught up in it, and you accidentally shoot him. You see a figure in the shadows or whatever, or you're shooting an enemy and he just runs in front of you and takes some gunfire. In which case, you go rogue. You didn't intend to go rogue, you didn't want to go rogue, but now you're rogue, and now everyone on the map has an incentive to shoot you. This is not good because it's just so many things go wrong with that. A lot of times, I've seen people accidentally shoot me or someone in my squad. It was very clear it was an accident, but they went rogue. They and their one other or two other party members went rogue, because you kind of all go rogue at the same time, even if you didn't kill anyone, which is kind of a problem too. And we gunned them down. And the reason we gun them down is because if you don't gun them down, they'll gun you down, because you have red text too. It's really weird, and this is the problem with it, is you may not go rogue, but if there's gunfire and players are hitting each other but not quite meeting the threshold, some players will have red health bars just like an enemy would, just like a rogue player would, so then sometimes you're going to shoot them by accident just because you're confused. You're in the fray, and then now you're rogue, and it's just, they really need to instill some sort of it was a fucking accident, emote or something, where you can say, listen, it was an accident, cool your jets. Because right now, it got to the point where people were baiting each other in PvP. People were just shooting near people, trying to dive into gunfire and explosions, trying to get other people to go rogue so they could just gun them down. And something's need to be done with this, and I think instilling some sort of mechanic, it's a mistake mechanic where you stop shooting, you put down your gun, and you're like, it was a mistake, and then you undo your rogue status, right? And if they continue to kill you, then they will for sure go rogue. But as it is now, I think that it's too easy to accidentally go rogue, and that's the problem. Now, on the other side of things, not everything is, cherries and fun and sunshine. Some people want to go rogue. They want to kill other players. And I may not be one of those players. In fact, I'm not. I'm super nice, actually, in the PvP. I always let people extract. I don't like attacking people. However, for this PvP to work, there's got to be people who are the complete opposite of me, that are assholes, that want to kill people. And there's nothing wrong with that, because again, that's how the PvP works. However, there's a definite problem with actually going rogue, because when you kill other players, you get the rogue timer. Now, this rogue timer, if you survive until it goes away, you get a massive chunk of experience. Alright, great, that mechanic is fine. However, the rogue timers seem to last absolutely forever. And again, in this scenario that I was going to before, and I'm going to tell kind of a story of when I had a manhunt on me. So basically what happened was we had a player who, he was actually somehow invisible. His connection was screwy, and he was saying that he could see us, but we couldn't see him. So he's like, I'm going to go test this out. He went and he shot someone. He didn't kill them, he just shot them because he was hella curious. We all were. And then the entire squad went rogue. I and everyone else hid behind cover. We're like, oh shit, we're rogue. That was funny. I guess it worked. Hid. Someone came up to where we were hiding, walked right in on us, and started shooting us. Clearly, we're gonna kill him. Right? Like, either he's gonna kill us, we're gonna lose all of our gear, all of our, a lot of our money, a lot of our experience, or we're gonna kill him. Clearly, we killed him. And then our rogue timers went from 20 seconds to like 80 seconds. And now we're officially rogue. And then more people kept coming for us, and we kept killing them. We weren't engaging, we weren't going out of our way to kill anyone. We were killing the people who were lobbing grenades at us, trying to kill us first. We were just trying to survive, and we went more and more and more rogue until eventually there was a full manhunt, which means that you're at the max level of rogue. You have a 5-minute timer you have to survive, and if you do, you get a massive chunk of money. It was actually like 700 of the Dark Zone currency in the beta. But I think that's kind of a wonky mechanic that I can basically, not intend to harm anyone and yet still go full manhunt, just trying to survive. And I think that that's kind of a weird mechanic. I don't know how they would fix it, but I think that they should distinguish just trying to survive to actually intentionally going rogue and trying to like intentionally kill people. You shouldn't get as much of an increase when you're killing someone who is shooting at you than if you just go out of your way and shoot someone in the back, for example. But in the beta, it was the same penalty. So me killing someone who's trying to kill me gets me as much of an increase in my rogue timer as me, killing someone like an asshole right before they extract. Obviously, something needs to be done to fix this because there's two totally different intentions there. And when it was the manhunt, we actually went to this location in the map where there was only one way up. And I'm sure not some of you know where this place is, but it's essentially you climb up this rope and we're just hiding at the back, waiting for the rogue timer to go away. And again, a 5-minute timer, which is huge, one way up. So we were just aiming down sights, hoping that people wouldn't come up. We did the pulses. There was people coming up. We knew people were coming up. Someone came up. We shot around him. We all shot above his head to try to get him to go away. This moron, I don't know who he thought he was, but he didn't, right? He's throwing grenades at us. Finally, we had to kill him. And then the rogue timer, we had waited from 5 minutes to 70 seconds left. We kill this guy because he's obviously trying to kill us first, and it goes back to 5 minutes. Like, what? It's basically impossible to survive the manhunt timer legitimately if you're playing any sort of competent players. And I mean legitimately because actually what you could have done, and what we actually sadly ended up doing, is you just rappel down the back, you go out of bounds, and then after waiting out of bounds for 10 seconds, it teleports you to the nearest safe house, and then you just wait out the timer. Now that sounds douchey, and it was douchey, but seriously guys, please explain to me any other way I could have survived that scenario. Like, everyone on the map is alerted to our presence whenever we shoot a gun, and they're all coming for us. Every time we kill someone, just defending ourselves, we go back to 5 minutes. There needs to be some sort of way where you can, hide. I agree with having a large timer. I agree that if you go super rogue, that you are actually to the manhunt level, that there needs to be, a massive risk in doing that. You should have a 5-minute timer. You should have people alerted to you maybe when you kill someone, but there needs to be something done for the players, like myself, who you almost accidentally end up in a manhunt timer, or you basically have no chance of survival, or there needs to be some chance of survival if you have a manhunt timer. So they really need to mess around with those kind of aspects. Now, additionally, one more thing about the Dark Zone, there are many times where it was quite boring. And there were many times where it was quite exciting. Like, don't get me wrong, especially when people are fighting over an extraction zone or something. But a lot of the time, you're just trying to ignore players and you're hunting AI opponents because they're actually going to drop most of the good loot. And you can kill them all you want and you won't go rogue, right? So you're hunting these, NPCs. Well, frankly, the NPCs spawn rate they don't spawn enough or in enough numbers at all. Some places around the map where we were, and again, this could kind of be fixed possibly by just extending the map. Maybe there's a lot more intense engagements that was just not in the beta. But from what I played, there really wasn't a ton of AI enemies. When you engage them, they're frankly pretty easy to kill, especially once you started to get a lot of the really good Dark Zone loot. And a lot of the time, they just weren't there because, you know, you had killed them in the past few minutes or someone else had killed them. So a lot of your time in the dark zone is spent wandering around, looking for AI enemies, and just not finding any, and just wandering around, and it's not very fun. So I think they need to increase the spawn timers for sure. Or, I mean, I bring up this problem because this was a problem, and I said this when I was playing the game, so I think it's fair to bring it up to you guys. But this could be a problem that solves itself when the full game comes out. The map is expanded, so people naturally spread out, and you're not having the same people farm the same AI enemies over and over and over again, and you have a lot more diversity in the population of the player base. So again, this could solve itself, but from what I have seen, I think that they need to kind of just increase the spawn rates and also maybe just the numbers that enemies spawn at as well. So in answering the question, is the Division any good? I think, you know, my opinion is that the base mechanics of the game in terms of shooting, in terms of movement, they're good. The PvP that everyone's talking about, I think it does have some problems, don't get me wrong, but I think overall, had a ton of fun, it's good too. Now, the last thing I want to talk about, and this is, you know, probably actually one of the more important things when determining is the Division actually any good, and that is the loot system. This is, in essence, still a loot-based game. The reason you keep playing and are, you know, hopefully are going to be keep logging on over and over and over again is loot. Getting more loot. Getting better loot, getting better, you know, stuff so that you can do better in PvE, so that you can, you know, own the dark zone. And games like Destiny, games like Borderlands, they were all built around this loot system. And when the loot system doesn't work, the game doesn't work. And we have seen evidence of this happen before. I'm not going to discuss it in this video, but I think a lot of you know the loot system needs to be pretty substantial, needs to be airtight, and it can't be something that is just forgotten about. And the loot system in the Division, I think overall, first impressions, I like it. And I like it because I think that there is a substantial amount of differentiation. Maybe not necessarily on the weapons, and I'm going to say that we probably haven't actually seen a lot in the beta. Remember the Destiny beta. In the Destiny beta, you actually couldn't even get any blue weapons. It was only up to greens. So we didn't see basically anything of the loot system there. And it seems like in this case, hopefully we haven't really seen anything. And if we haven't, if there's truly more to come, then this loot system gets even better. You know, like, I liked what I saw, and I would love to see even more of it. But even if there isn't more of it, I still liked what I saw. There seems to be good differentiation between the different weapons in the game. You know, assault rifles in the Division, even though it's a third-person shooter, an M4 feels very different from the Gold Scar L, from the military PM16 or whatever it is, from the AK-47. So you have loot that actually feels different, that acts differently from each other. And that's just the assault rifles. There's also shotguns, SMGs, marksman rifles. There's a lot of different guns in the game, which is good. But also, not only is there guns, but there's also that huge aspect of the attachment system. Turns out the attachment system wasn't actually as amazing as I thought it was. There isn't, from what we saw in the beta, again, there could be more in the full game, but from what we saw in the beta, you know, there wasn't that much of a difference between the different, you know, underbarrel grip attachments. Pretty much every grip, even if it was an angled grip or a vertical grip or, you know, whatever kind of grip it was, it pretty much all did the same thing, which was a little disappointing. However, I did like the diversity in some areas. You know, sights, for example. If you had an assault rifle, you could put on a 4x ACOG sight and then kind of use all the other mods for your gun and customize it to increase the range, increase the accuracy, and really just go for an assault rifle that's good at range. Or you could do a max damage build. You could have, like, I found enhanced iron sights that didn't have anything to do with zoom or range. They just increased the critical hit damage and the critical hit chance, right? And you could find magazine clips, like heavy magazine springs, that didn't increase the magazine size, but rather just increase the fire rate and increase the critical hit damage or whatever. So it seems to be enough diversity in the attachment system that you can take a weapon And if you have enough different attachments, you can spec it for different things, which is awesome. That really increases diversity, and I'm glad to see that in the game. It's a huge step forward for the Division's loot system. And there's also talents for guns, or, practically they're perks, but essentially in the Division they're called talents, that do all these different things as well. You can find a blue assault rifle that does more damage against armored targets, or, does, if you get a headshot, it increases your health, or gives you more skill power, or a million different things, right? Just like the different perks in Destiny. And we know already in Destiny that, a gun with, you can have two of the same guns, but if they have different perks, one could be vastly different than the other. And the same thing hopefully can be found in the Division. So the Division has a pretty diverse loot system in terms of the base weapons. Like, weapons feel decently different from each other. That's good. That's step one. Step two, the perks, or the talents, they're going to differentiate the weapons even further. Not only are you going to be looking for a weapon with good stats, but you may pick a weapon that has slightly worse stats because it has better talents. That's another huge step in the direction for the Division loot system being good. And we have the attachment system. The attachment system adds even another step of diversity. You can customize your gun in different ways. You can make up for certain guns failing. And you have one more step in the diversity of the loot system, which is you have actual unique gear, which we saw with the gold or high-end weapons in the game. The Cosidus, I think it was called, and the Cassidy. Those weapons, they actually had unique perks. They had perks that no other weapon could get, like talents that no other weapon could get. That's already great. That's exactly like the exotics in Destiny, right? So that's another aspect of diversity. And that's just weapon diversity. That's not even taken into account. You can also have all of this armor diversity. You can have these different armor pieces, and the armor pieces don't just have armor, right? It's not just about your health. They can increase your firearm damage. They can increase your skill power. They can increase your health. They have all these other attributes as well. Gloves that have increased marksman rifle damage. So if you have a good marksman's rifle, you can actually kind of spec your character. You can actually, change your armor and make your character, focused just for marksman rifles, to do as much marksman rifle damage as possible, as much critical damage as possible. And that's absolutely fantastic, because you can do the exact opposite. If you find a good SMG, you can spec your character to be good with SMGs, right? Have good hip fire, all of that stuff. And that is a really just, these are the hallmarks of an excellent, well-designed, long-lasting loot system. However, again, last warning, be careful, because the loot system, as I've went over, looks very good, very promising. However, you can't truly find the problems of a loot system until you've spent hundreds of hours with the game, earned hundreds, thousands of pieces of loot, right? I wasn't even aware of the Destiny loot system problems until late in the game. I was aware before a lot of other people were aware, let me just tell you that, but I still need to spend a ton of hours with the game to actually find the problems within the loot system, and it's probably going to be the same thing for the Division, so be careful. However, from what we've seen so far, it all looks good. So, in summary, after a half an hour long commentary, is the Division any good? Yes. I like the Division. I'm definitely going to be buying it. I'm definitely going to be making videos on it. I'm not going to completely abandon all my other games, don't worry. But it is something I really enjoyed, and I think that if you're a fan of loot-based shooters, if you liked Destiny but want something different, I would recommend picking up the Division. I really did enjoy it, and I think you will too. Now that's it for the video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did, please remember to slap that subscribe button. Now, if you want to see more Division content down the road, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter. That's linked in the description of this video down below, as is my Twitch channel, which you can follow as well. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.